Imagine this. You wake up, you're motivated, you're ready. Today is the day you finally stick to your diet. You eat a small breakfast, you skip the snacks, you push through the hunger. And for a few days, it actually works. But then something shifts. The hunger gets louder. The cravings start creeping in. Your mood drops, your focus disappears, and every single meal starts to feel like a battle you're slowly losing. And then one evening, you cave. Maybe it's a bag of chips. Maybe it's a chocolate bar. Maybe it's just one slice of bread that turns into 4. And just like that, the guilt rushes in, and you tell yourself the same thing you always do, that you're just not strong enough, that you don't have enough willpower, that other people can do this, so why can't you? But here's what nobody tells you. That feeling, that relentless, overwhelming hunger you experience every time you try to eat less, that is not a character flaw. It is a biological response. Your body is not broken, and you are not weak. The system is just working against you in a way that most people never fully understand. And today, I want to show you exactly why that happens, and more importantly, I want to show you one surprisingly simple thing that can change the entire equation. Not a supplement, not a drug, not some complicated meal plan with 17 rules. One nutrient that most people are dramatically undereating, that has the power to completely reshape how hungry you feel, how long you stay full, and how many calories you naturally consume without ever having to count a single one. That nutrient is fiber. And before you click away thinking you already know this, I promise you, you do not know the full story. Because this is not about eating cardboard-tasting health food or forcing yourself to chew through things you hate. This is about understanding what fiber actually does inside your body at a biological level, and why getting more of it is probably the single most powerful shift you can make if you have ever struggled with hunger, cravings, or losing weight and keeping it off. The science behind this is genuinely impressive, and by the end of this, I think you are going to look at food in a completely different way. So stay with me, because this is worth understanding properly. Let's start with why dieting feels so brutal for most people, because the struggle is very real and very physical. When you cut your calories, your body does not just sit back and let it happen quietly. It fights back, and it fights back hard. The first thing that happens is your hunger hormone, ghrelin, starts rising. Your body interprets the calorie reduction as a food shortage, almost like a famine signal, and it responds by ramping up your appetite to push you to eat more. At exactly the same time, leptin, which is the hormone responsible for telling your brain that you've had enough, starts to fall. So you are producing more hunger and feeling less satisfaction from the food you do eat. That is a genuinely brutal hormonal combination, and it is the reason why people on calorie-restricted diets feel absolutely ravenous within days. Then on top of that, you have the blood sugar problem, which is a completely separate beast. When your calorie intake drops and your meals are light, your blood sugar levels can fall quite quickly. And when blood sugar drops, your brain starts screaming for the fastest energy source it can find. That means sugar, processed food, anything beige and quick and instantly satisfying. And the world around you is absolutely packed with exactly those things. Every shop, every petrol station, every office kitchen, every vending machine is full of ultra-processed, low-fiber, high-sugar food that is scientifically engineered to be irresistible. So you are fighting your own hormones while surrounded by the exact foods your brain is demanding. And when you finally give in, as most people inevitably do, the diet is over and the shame cycle begins again. This is not weakness, this is biology. And it is time to stop blaming yourself for something your body is literally designed to do. Now, I want to share something personal here, because I think it matters. I used to be overweight. on and off for years, and I tried a lot of things. I understand from the inside what it feels like to be constantly preoccupied with food, to feel irritable and distracted, to lie awake thinking about what you're allowed to eat tomorrow. And when I finally started dramatically increasing my fiber intake, something shifted in a way I did not expect. I started eating more volume of food, more vegetables, more legumes, more whole grains, and even though my total calorie count had technically gone up in some ways, my weight came down, my waist shrank, my cravings quieted. I stopped feeling like I was fighting my own body every single day, and that was the moment I started paying very close attention to what fiber was actually doing and why it worked so powerfully. Here is the thing that makes all of this even more alarming. The recommended daily fiber intake in the UK is 30 grams per day. In the US, it is around 25 to 35 grams depending on your age and sex. The average adult in both countries is eating around 15 to 18 grams. That is barely 60% of what is recommended, and even that target is considered conservative compared to what many researchers actually suggest. In countries like Japan and parts of Sardinia, where people consistently live longer, weigh less, and carry far lower rates of chronic disease, fiber intakes can be 2, 3, even 4 times higher than the Western average. This is not a coincidence. This is a pattern that keeps showing up in the data, and it tells us something very important about the connection between fiber, hunger, and long-term health. So how does fiber actually work? Let's walk through it properly, because the mechanisms are fascinating and understanding them makes everything click. The first thing fiber does is slow down your digestion. When you eat fiber-rich foods, they take longer to break down and move through your gut. That means the food you just ate physically stays in your stomach and upper intestines for much longer than refined food would. And here is the important part. Your stomach has stretch receptors, little sensors built into the walls that detect how full it is. When those receptors are activated, they send signals directly to your brain saying, "We have food in here, slow down, we are covered." Fiber keeps those receptors activated for longer, which means the fullness signal keeps going after a fiber-rich meal for a much longer period. That alone changes everything about how hungry you feel in the hours after eating. The second mechanism is about your blood sugar, and this one is huge. When you eat refined carbohydrates, things like white bread, sugary drinks, processed snacks, anything that is a bit beige or comes in a packet with ingredients you do not recognize, your blood sugar surges rapidly and then crashes equally fast. That crash is what causes the mid-afternoon slump. The desperate craving for something sweet, the feeling that you absolutely must eat something right now, even though you had lunch an hour ago. What fiber does to prevent that is genuinely remarkable. As it moves through your small intestine, it forms something close to a physical mesh along the gut lining, a barrier that glucose has to pass through to get into your bloodstream. Think of it like a net stretched across a river. Water still flows through, but it flows slowly and steadily rather than all at once. That is almost exactly what fiber does to sugar absorption. Instead of glucose flooding your blood rapidly, it seeps through gradually, giving you a smooth, sustained rise and a gentle fall. No crash, no cravings, no desperate sprint to the vending machine at 3 in the afternoon. The third mechanism is where things get really interesting: gut hormones. When fiber reaches the lower part of your intestine, it triggers the release of specific hormones, most notably GLP-1 and PI. You may have heard of GLP-1 recently because the new generation of weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy work by mimicking this exact hormone. These drugs have taken the world by storm because they are so effective at suppressing appetite. But here is what most people do not realize. Eating a high-fiber diet causes your body to produce GLP-1 naturally. Not at the same concentration as a pharmaceutical injection, of course, but it is real, it is measurable, and it has no side effects, no nausea, no cost, and no waiting list. These hormones travel to your brain and tell it clearly and directly, you are full. You do not need more food right now. Stand down. That is hunger suppression at the hormonal level, driven entirely by what you eat, and it is one of the most underused tools in weight management. The fourth mechanism takes us deeper into your gut, down to the microbiome. When fiber reaches your large intestine, your gut bacteria ferment it. They break it down and produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids, particularly one called butyrate. And these compounds have a remarkably wide-ranging influence on your health. They strengthen the gut lining, they reduce inflammation throughout the body, and crucially, they interact with hunger and metabolism in ways that researchers are still working to fully understand. But what we do know is this: people with more diverse, well-fed gut bacteria consistently show better appetite regulation and better metabolic health overall. And the food that feeds those bacteria most effectively is dietary fiber. A large study tracking over 400,000 people across Europe found that every 10-gram increase in daily fiber intake was associated with an 11% reduction in colorectal cancer risk, and that was on top of the weight and metabolic benefits. So when you put all four of these mechanisms together, you have a single nutrient that fills you up physically, stabilizes your blood sugar, triggers your natural fullness hormones, and feeds the bacteria that regulate your metabolism. That is not one benefit. That is four simultaneous biological advantages working in your favor at the same time. Now let's talk about the best foods to actually get this fiber from, because this is where it becomes practical and actionable. The highest fiber foods with the strongest research behind them are legumes, beans, lentils, and chickpeas. A single tin of chickpeas contains around 12 grams of fiber, which is nearly half of your entire daily target in one ingredient. Legumes are also high in protein, which compounds the appetite-reducing effect even further. A bowl of lentil soup, black beans in a chili, chickpeas roasted in the oven. These are some of the most satisfying and filling meals you can eat. If you are not eating legumes regularly right now, that is probably the single biggest nutritional upgrade you can make this week, no question. Oats are another excellent source, particularly because they contain a specific type of fiber called beta-glucan, which is exceptionally effective at slowing digestion and blunting blood sugar spikes. The key is to use proper rolled oats rather than the instant varieties, and to eat them with a protein source like Greek yogurt or eggs to slow the glucose response further and keep you fuller for even longer. Vegetables are absolutely essential here, particularly the non-starchy ones: broccoli, cauliflower, courgette, leafy greens, carrots, celery. You can eat enormous volumes of these foods for relatively low calories, and the fiber content keeps you physically full in a way that most diet foods simply do not. Something I personally do before every evening meal is chop up a large pile of carrots, cucumber, and celery, and put out a tub of hummus for the whole family to snack on while dinner is cooking. It takes 2 minutes to prepare, and it means everyone has already eaten a solid hit of fiber and protein before the main meal even arrives. Berries are another fantastic choice, particularly raspberries and blackberries, which are among the highest fiber fruits available and are also very low in sugar relative to most other fruits. And do not overlook whole grains: brown rice, quinoa, barley, whole grain bread. When grains are refined into white flour, most of the fiber is stripped out entirely. What remains is a fast-digesting carbohydrate with very little nutritional value left, which raises blood sugar quickly and leaves you hungry again faster. The swap from refined to whole grains is one of the simplest and most impactful changes you can make with almost no disruption to your regular meals. So what does all of this look like in terms of actual fat loss? Multiple large-scale studies have found that people who eat more dietary fiber naturally consume fewer calories throughout the day, not because they are forcing themselves to stop eating, but because they become genuinely full more quickly and stay that way for longer. One major review found that increasing fiber intake by just 14 grams per day was associated with a 10% reduction in calorie intake overall. Another randomized controlled trial found that simply telling people to eat more fiber, with no other dietary instruction whatsoever, led to meaningful, measurable weight loss over 12 months, comparable to following a full structured dietary program. Just fiber. Nothing else changed. And the most important word in all of that research is sustainable. Because yes, you can lose weight on almost any diet if you restrict hard enough for a few weeks. But if you are miserable, if you are constantly hungry, if you are white-knuckling every meal, you will eventually stop. Fiber turns the hunger dial down to a level where losing weight stops feeling like an act of willpower and starts feeling like a natural consequence of eating the right things. Here is the honest, simple truth I want you to leave with today. Weight loss is not purely a mathematics problem. It is not just calories in versus calories out, full stop, end of story. Food composition matters enormously, specifically how different foods affect your hunger levels, your hormones, and your gut bacteria. And dietary fiber sits right at the center of all of that. Start gradually, because if you go from 15 grams to 30 grams overnight, your gut will absolutely notice, and not in a pleasant way. Increase slowly over a few weeks, drink more water as you go, and give your gut bacteria time to adjust. Build your meals around legumes, oats, vegetables, berries, and whole grains. Aim for at least 30 grams a day. And please do not waste your money on the fiber supplements being aggressively advertised by influencers on Instagram and TikTok. The research consistently points to whole food sources as the most effective approach, not powders in a shaker. The solution was never complicated. It was just fiber. Real food, eaten consistently, working with your biology instead of against it. And that changes everything.